Channel 5 Network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line, a very important show tonight. We are talking about homelessness and its correlation to our city's lack of affordable housing. The fact of the matter is, the number of homeless people who have died in Nashville is increasing. It's increasing year after year. And some believe you can directly tie that to our lack of affordable housing. We're going to talk about that tonight. We encourage you to call in, be part of the conversation. Happy to have with us Howard Allen, homeless activist and co-founder of the Nashville Homeless Underground. And you are homeless, right?
Yes, I'm face of homelessness.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
I want to hear your story, and I appreciate you being here. And also Lindsey Krinks with Open Table Nashville. Lindsey, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
You've been on before, and we'll hear more about Open Table. But what is at stake here? Why you're tying affordable housing, homelessness? What have we seen here in the last few years in Nashville? And I'll give it to you, Lindsey.
Yeah, so we believe housing is a human right, because to live without housing is to live in subhuman conditions. And what we see happening is, we see when people are outside exposed to the elements, exposed to the trauma and the living hell of the streets, their health goes down. We've had a number of people die of exposure, a number of people die of medical issues. So this isn't just a charity issue. This is a justice issue. It's a life or death issue. And our people are dying while they're on waiting lists for affordable housing. So something's wrong and something's got to change.
And the numbers in 2016, 89 people died. 2017, 118 homeless people died, right? And then last year, 127. So we're seeing these numbers go up.
We are.
And now, could that be because there's so many more people moving to the city? Is it because our city is just growing naturally? Or what about that?
We certainly are having more folks come here, but we really believe, anecdotally, with the names of the people on that list, I know several people who died while they were waiting for housing. And I can tell you some of those stories. There's a guy named Carl on that list. He was in his 50s, lived in North Nashville. He was on a waiting list for affordable housing for over 10 months, and he died the week before he was supposed to move in of a heart attack. His heart just couldn't take it anymore. So we believe it's because of the long waits, and people that are already medically fragile and vulnerable are being forced on even longer waiting lists right now. So we think there's a direct correlation to the lack of affordable housing and to the units of affordable housing that we're losing in our city due to development.
And Howard, I want to ask you, Nashville Homeless Underground. What is that? Your co-founder, how did you come to start that? What is Nashville Homeless Underground?
Nashville Homeless Underground is a grassroots organization that's dealing with not just homeless individuals, but some homies. I have some friends that have correlated with me, where I can tell the story, where I can bring real people and let them actually see what homelessness is actually about. I'm a Nashvillian. It doesn't matter that I went to Father Ryan or 2 years of college at Tennessee State and a year at Texas Southern. I'm without housing. And the 89 people that you talked about, the 118 people, and then 127, that's my brothers and sisters, that's my family. I've shared meals with many of them. And it's a problem, and I don't like to use the word affordable housing. It needs to be low income housing. I don't like to use the word chronic homeless. If you're homeless, you're chronic. Because you need to understand, you're not living, you're surviving. So that's what I do. I survive day to day.
What would the biggest misunderstanding for people be about the homeless?
Oh, one of the biggest things is right now they're going to say, well, you might get a call. I say, Howard, you don't look homeless. What does homeless look like? That's one of the biggest misunderstandings. And then they think that we're lazy. We work. Over 2/3 of us work every day, but we're not making a living wage. One of the most cruelest and inhumane things that ever happened in the United States was slavery. But even the slave master had housing, which is a form of health care.
Yeah, you were saying when you go to work now, what you're paid is certainly not going to cover the cost of it.
Well, I'm on disability, but if you're making $7.25 an hour, and they're talking about affordable housing, it starts at $900 to $1,400 to $1,600 a month. You can't pay that. and I'm not ashamed to say what I get. I just got a raise, $7.71. And if I went out to pay $20 a day for 3 meals a day for 30 days, that's $600. So what does that leave me? And when you come, this is my city. I'm a Nashvilleian. When you look, you can see the Krinks. And they're building hotels, they're building garages, they're building condos. And I know if you can take a molded piece of bread and make penicillin, you should be able to figure out a way how to house people that don't have housing.
How did you wind up in this situation? How did you wind up homeless?
Well, I can talk just a little bit about it because I have a legal matter. I was evicted in 2014, and so I had to go back on the street. But now, they say I must pay. They put a collection agency on me because I didn't pay my last month's rent, which was $203 a month. And for being late, it would be $213. But now I have to pay over like $1,300 to be able to go back in, and I'm not going to pay that.
So you were evicted.
I was evicted, but I have.
And you've been homeless ever since?
Since 2014. And that's through MDHA. And everything that's being built here goes through MDHA. And I can understand what the word metro, and I can understand what the word agency means. But when you say development, it's the development of the city. It's not for the development for people like me without housing.
And all right, Open Table. Yes. A lot of us know what Open Table is, but give us the overview. What is Open Table? So
we're not the dinner reservation group. We are an interfaith homeless outreach organization. We came into being around the flood, 2010, and we go out to where people are. So earlier today, I was trekking through the woods, taking supplies to campsites, going to check on abandoned houses and the families that are living in there in the winter. And we don't just give people supplies, we're really helping people navigate the resources. Few as they are, sometimes the way it feels is there's not enough, but we help them navigate the resources, and we're also working on the justice issues of affordable housing in our city, of low-income housing, to have more justice and equity, because we don't see the folks on the bottom thriving here. We don't see the development and the way Nashville has come up really affecting and bringing everyone up.
When we have various politicians on, sometimes homelessness comes up, and they will talk about the Barnes Fund here in Nashville, that they have put a lot of money in. The last mayor put a lot of money in. Mayor Briley has put money in. Is the Barnes Fund doing enough? When you hear that answer, I'll ask both of you.
Let her answer first.
Okay, you go first.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are we doing enough? What can the city be doing more? Specifically, this Barnes Fund.
The Barnes Fund is incredible. For folks that aren't aware, it's a housing trust fund, and it's a dedicated source of local funding for affordable housing that you can leverage with state funding or private funding to build this housing. And it's incredibly important that we have it. But if you look at the scale to which we need right now, Mayor Berry, before she went out, she said we need 31,000 units of affordable housing, low-income housing, by 2025 if we're going to meet the need. Advocates think that's closer to 40,000 units that we're going to need in a few years' time. So what we're looking at is, some advocates have said we need $775 million to really invest in affordable housing now. I saw your eyebrows go up. That's a huge amount. Because our city doesn't
have, money for schools. Our city's struggling right now.
Our city is struggling, and housing is one of the foundations of a healthy community if you think about education and the children that are going through. So we really need a much bigger scale, and this isn't just a local issue, it's a federal issue as well. We're seeing a lot of housing cuts happening over the decades we have. So the Barnes Fund alone is great, and we need more funding for it, and we appreciate the funding that we have, but it's not enough. We've got to do more, and we need more equity. We need more private investment, we need more public investment. And what would you add to that, Howard?
What I would say basically is, this is a people thing. It's not just a government thing or a Channel 5 thing or a Howard thing. It's a people thing. And you were talking about the education. We have a large scale of young adults in metropolitan schools that are homeless, and we don't ever talk about that. So it's something that needs to be fixed, and it can be fixed, but it's going to take people. And like I said, it's just a sad situation that you can be in what is called the it city. And to me, this is my city. This is where I was brought up. I was born and reared here, but it's not an it city for me because this city has changed from being a good place to a millennial city, a police city, and a tourist city. And I'm in the category of the people of poverty. We have 16% throughout this state of poverty, but I'm the ones that sleep up under the interstate on the bus benches, and it's just not right. Like I said, housing is a human right, and according to Article 23, you have the right for food, clothing, and to pursue happiness. How can you pursue happiness if you don't have a home?
What is realistic for us as a city? I think people hear about this, they want to help, and they're overwhelmed. They're frankly overwhelmed. And when I hear the number you threw out, what did you throw out? $700 million?
Yeah, over.
When I hear that, I'm overwhelmed. I mean, what is realistic, let's say next budget year, and let's take it one step at a time. You know, what would you recommend? What would you say if you could speak to the political leaders of Nashville?
Yeah. Well, you know, in one sense, $700 million is a lot of money, but in another sense, the convention center cost over $600. This is not a question about, do we have the money, can we come up with it? It's a question of priorities. So I would ask our leaders, what are your priorities? Who are you really serving? Who are you fighting for the safety of? Our people are dying more than they ever have on the streets. Our people are in jail, they're in slums. And so this is a question of priorities. One of the things we continue to say is we need more money, we need more equity. So there's a bill right now that says that's going through Metro Council that says when we give corporations incentives, we're also going to give a comparable amount to the Barnes Fund, because we don't just need to invest in businesses. If that's going to help our economy, great. Housing helps the economy too. It's cheaper than keeping people on the streets spinning through emergency rooms and other crisis services. So not only do we need investment, but the other thing I would say is we really need a plan to build out that 40,000 units that we're going to need. We don't need to just stop the work and make the plan, but 100 units downtown service center isn't going to get us to the 40,000 that we need. We need our leaders to prioritize this and then come up with a plan for that, and to continue to fund it through the budget cycle.
You're talking about that bill from Fabian Bedney and Colby Sledge.
Yes.
And they're talking about anytime incentive money is given out, you would give an equal amount to the Barnes Fund.
Yes.
And it hasn't passed at this point,
No,
right? It's still
not yet.
out there. Are you hopeful, or I guess are you confident it will pass? What do you think its chances are?
I don't have a feel for that right now. I don't know the water. I certainly appreciate them entering it, and I hope some form of it will pass, because equity keeps coming up in every discussion in the city when we talk about housing, talk about transportation. So.
What would you say? Are people overwhelmed and they just don't know what to do? What would you say?
I think some of them are overwhelmed, but homelessness scares a lot of people, because either you might have a family member or you know someone that's homeless, and they're just afraid. I mean, when we had, he was councilman at large last year, now he's vice mayor. We just had a bill passed, the cold weather bill. You know, when the weatherman comes on and says it's 32 degrees, bring in your plants and your animals, but leave the homeless out until it's 25 degrees. So we went for 28 last year, and we're going 28 again this year, and then hopefully next year we'll come in at 32. And some of the politicians will say, well, why do we need to go at 32? Well, that's when freezing starts. So if it's good enough for the animals and the plants to come in, then it's good enough for us to come in. And I've talked to many politicians and said some things, and it's the difference between listening and actually hearing and comprehending. And we have meetings that I go to on a regular basis, and they give us 3 minutes to say what we have to say. I mean, I have a better chance when I go to the council meetings, but when I go to the council, if I look at the State House, that's where the hypocrisy is. That's where the laws can be changed for better. But the number one thing is, you're gonna have to talk to people like me that are homeless to see what we can do, because it's got to be a common ground somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then I also ask people, I say, well, you know, what's the most famous homeless person you know, Mr. Hall?
Well, that's an interesting question. The most famous homeless person I know.
And poor.
I don't know.
It would be Jesus Christ.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how could you go to church on Sunday
Right.
and worship a homeless person, and then Monday through Saturday ignore one?
And do you feel that that is what has happened? Because again, these, the city would say we're not ignoring, but how do you feel it's been?
I think whenever you have something that you want to do that's morally right, and then it becomes political, it can't be done.
All right, we have to take a break.
Okay.
I want to come back. I want to hear more of your story, more of what you're out doing, and then we're going to start taking a lot of calls. If you're on the line, hold on. We already have a lot of calls. Mark and Kimmy, Mike, Sheila, others. Hold on.
Awesome.
We'll take a break. Be back right after this.